I would like to give you a very short and very fast overview of what's Angular. So I'm going to present you a set of slides. So I present you the course. Now I want to show you a little bit about how Angular works. So on this part, I want to show you how Angular works. See that it is supposed to be a very crash course on Angular, a very crash course, a very fast course. I mean, I'm not sure if this part goes well. I'm going to add this part to the. I'm going to add as well this part to the course. So Angular. So the course is about Angular, unit test, and numerical analysis. What does that mean? That means that there's a huge amount of stuff here. I have to be honest. So it can be. My hope is that if you start to learn from the beginning, so this course mainly focuses on the people that are starting. If you start from the beginning, thinking big, like thinking an integration way, thinking how all this technology go together, I believe that you can learn much more, because I believe one of the biggest mistakes that you make when you learn learn. I mean, when I was learning Java, I remember that the people from Java, the book they tell how to program. They said that you should learn right from the beginning. I mean, the book was talking about the object-oriented programming. So I have learned object-oriented programming since the beginning. I can tell it was a very nice experience, because I mean, there is no need for me to learn about the traditional programming before object-oriented programming, and I miss nothing at all, because when you learn the wrong way, you have the high risk to get some kind of bad thinking or patterns. So if you learn right from the beginning, essentially you have the from time to time. I'm going to just check here, because you can remember that you can ask questions if you want. So from time to time I'm going to check here. So that's it. So if you learn right from the beginning, you let me just check if the sound is just fine. Everything is working fine. I have to check from time to time just to make sure. Anyway, so that's the point. That's the reason why I believe that you should learn. That's the reason why I believe you should learn. And you should try to learn as much as possible in the beginning. How ethics go together. So how Angular, I'm even preparing. I'm even preparing an ebook that I'm thinking to launch an ebook about Angular in numerical analysis. And it's supposed to be I called it a scientific Angular. So that's the point. That's the reason why I think that you should not be afraid of learning all the stuff together in the beginning. I mean, if you don't like, you can always go to the traditional way, like one thing at a time. But see that they are somehow connected, because if you are from the scientific world, sooner or later you are going to apply your because as I was reading Twitter one time, the guy was saying that your numerical your app, your web application, like techniques web application, your knowledge of the application is not alone, in the sense that if it's not applied somewhere, it's meaningless. So you learn, because learn can be pretty hard. So if you try since the beginning already like if you see the beginning you already trying to apply, you already trying to use it, it can be a very interesting experience. So that's what my thesis on the course. So nowadays we can build a full app from creation to deploy without expensive center. I can tell you I did it on my second postdoc. I did it now in the. Sometimes it really surprised me. Nowadays you have a kind of model which is based on the small to big. So just pay if you are big. I mean, if you are small, if you have a small app, everything is free. You just pay if by any chance you decide to go big. So there are several options such as Heroku, GitPage, Firebase. They all provide very cheap and fast way to deploy your app. So you can fast. Heroku, they are always, all of them, they are like online server that you can do it online. On my postdoc, the people, it had this kind of dilemma. I had some difficulty dealing with that on my postdoc, I have to be honest, because people want to use their own server. I tried in the beginning to use their server, but it's pretty hard because those Heroku, GitPage, Firebase, all of them, they already have a kind of they already did everything for you. So it's a kind of made that you don't have to do essentially almost anything. Like they already have everything already built for you. It's amazing how fast you can deploy. I mean, you have to learn in the beginning. You have that kind of learning curve. But the learning curve of Firebase and so on is much lower compared to you have your own server. It can be very disturbing, boring, like very discouraging when you are in the beginning. I'm talking about by my own experience. I tried in the beginning to have my own server because the people asked me to do that. I mean, they want me to use their own server. And to make the thing even worse, the situation even more difficult, the server they had was, the majority of the server, they are designed to work with PHP, because PHP is the traditional way to make server. Node.js, Angular, and so on, they are new. Like they are child compared to the old way to make web application. So the traditional server, they are very easy for you to work with PHP because they were designed to be work with PHP. So when you go to say Node.js, which is the new one from it becomes pretty hard if you have your own server. And not to mention that you have to give maintenance. You have to make sure that you have the kind of security, all the kind of security, HTTPS. I can tell you. I mean, I can talk about it for hours. How I will strongly encourage you not to use your own server, because it will be expensive, it will be time consuming, it will be cumbersome to work with that. So I can give you a huge amount of reasons why you should not work with your own server. Maybe I can write a middle article about that. So nowadays you have as well a huge amount of ways. Even you can. This first part here is about how to deploy, how to make your server available. But what about if you want to develop? It's still for free. And Visual Studio Code, StackBlitz, CodePen, all of their environment, they are free. They are very easy to use during the course. Maybe I have an idea. Maybe in the future I may add for you some kind of maybe in the future I can add for you some kind of course about that. But for now, let me just make sure. For now, maybe in the future I can add for you some kind of a course, maybe their own course, teach how to use Visual Code. But I have added for you how to use StackBlitz. I mean, I taught you CodePen. I didn't use CodePen yet. I know people use it a lot. But StackBlitz, it's in the course. It's an online environment, which is a copy of Visual Studio Code. There's a mistake here. Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code, or VS Code, as people like to call it. So yes, Code, as people like to call it. It's from Microsoft. So so you can do that everything for free. They have a huge amount of very easy to use, very friendly. There's a huge amount of assistance. So Angular, what we are going to use in the course, is a front-end framework. And React, Vue, they all provide free powerful programming framework and library, because React is a library. Vue, I'm not sure. But what is the difference between a library and a framework? I like to explain that because I have this difficulty. In the beginning, when I was working with Angular, I have a huge difficulty to understand what the hell is what the meaning of the framework or library. There's a difference. The framework, they kind of create for you a kind of way of working. So I want to understand better how Angular works. But frameworks change everything. That's one of the reasons why Angular is a little bit harder to learn compared to React, because React is just a library, as far as I know. I'm not programming in React, so I just know because React is a competitor of Angular. They are like fighting together for you to build your application then. They even a kind of history, because Angular is from Google, React is from Facebook. There is a kind of fight, it seems to me, between them, who want to be the big guy on the web development. So framework means that you need to follow some rules. So they essentially, Angular initially was a library, but they decided to make it a framework. So essentially, framework means that they have some rules that you have to follow. It's different from library. Library does not change how you're supposed to do stuff. Library just like sometimes you import, sometimes you just copy and paste the library on your folder, and that's all. But in the case of the framework, you need to pay attention to some rule. I like this because they put some order on the house. So here, as you can see, first you have to deploy. I'm going to the final where you're going to put your app available. Then you have the environment that you can work to build. Then you have the framework, library, or wherever you want to use that you. So here is you may say the language. Angular is not a language, but you can think that's the language. Then you have the environment for you to work in. Then you have the way that you leave your app available online. And also, not less important, you need to as well to have database. I mean, how are you going to save your information? How are you going to, for example, if you see your online app, it has a kind of user login system. So how are you going to store that information? So that's a good question. So that's what we need. So you have Firebase, you have MongoDB, Atlas. In general, I like to work with MongoDB, but recently I started to work with Firebase. I have even an article I wrote to the Geek Culture, which is a kind of online they call it journal, like it's not specific like scientific journal. So best of all, your app will be full functional. I mean, you may say, my app will be functional. Yeah, it will be functional, like all the functions. I like to call this the culture of free for small. Very small, most of the time you don't have to pay for anything for them. So before I go on, I just want to make sure that everything is working properly. So what is Angular? By the way, there is an article here I wrote on Medium about that. Medium is a website that you can find a huge amount of articles about anything, but they are very good at computer programming. I myself, I learned a lot from Medium. When I was doing my postdoc, I used to find a huge amount of articles. All of them were in Medium. So I decided as well to write to Medium. You can write whatever you want, and you can submit to some publication, like there will be the journal version of Medium, like someone is an editor, you submit, and the person accepts or not your article. More or less the same process of the scientific work. So what is Angular? Angular is a framework, as I said before. It was designed by Google, and it has been widely used to design sites, like platforms, or the name you prefer to call it. So yeah, site, platform, what you think that's the best you want to call it. So essentially, it's a framework to create front-end. I mean, there is a difference between back-end and front-end. Front-end is what you see in the server. Back-end is what you see on the back, like you don't see it like on the server. One thing about Angular, the Angular has become like autonomous in the sense that you don't have any more to create your back-end. But in Firebase, you essentially can do everything on Firebase. You even now have artificial intelligence. On this article here, I'm talking about TensorFlow. TensorFlow was developed as well by Google. And TensorFlow is a way for you to build artificial intelligence-based application. That's one of the things that I believe innovating part of mathematics, which is one of the topics of the channel can be quite strong. I have here on the channel some kind of artificial intelligence based discussion. There is even a sandbox by the same people, I believe, that developed TensorFlow.js. TensorFlow.js is a kind of you may call it's not a competitor because they have compatibility. You can move from TensorFlow.js and TensorFlow in Python. They claim that can make move from one to the other. So I don't say that they are a competitor, but they strongly have some kind of because TensorFlow.js is built to run on your browser. It's built to run with JavaScript. In TensorFlow, the traditional one is built to run in Python, which Python has Django and so on. But anyway, Angular, JavaScript, they are quite powerful and so on. On this channel, we have a very nice talk from Leandro Ludo, in which he talked about the biomedical image segmentation using TensorFlow, but TensorFlow, the traditional TensorFlow, which is not JS, which is written in Python. So in layman terms, the page you see when you work with Angular, it is a dynamic page. There is I can talk about that for hours, but there is a difference between when we talk about the static page and dynamic page. Dynamic page, I explain a little bit about that on the course. So in the course, we talk a little bit about that. Dynamic page has to do with whenever you change the your page, just the part that you change is going to change. So it's not going to change everything. Just change just the specific part that you want to change. There are some different that are a little bit hard to explain, but in simple term, very simple term, like in very brief, you have a page. The traditional way to build page that every page, so whenever you go to your browser and you put an address to your browser, it will be allowed a new page or new HTML. What Angular did, I'm not sure if React, I believe that React has the same pattern, but what I'm not sure about React, but about Vue and so on. But what Angular did, because I know I can talk about Angular, what Angular did was to make this not anymore like this. So whenever you put here a link on your page, it's not going to load the whole page anymore. It's going to load just the piece that you want. So if you have here a header, it's going to load just the header. If you have here a card that, for example, this card supposed to show something for you, it's loud just the card. Why that's important? That's important because you don't have anymore to loud everything. You just loud what you need. You can create lazy loud. You can create. There are several tricks that you can do that just can do use Angular. And theoretically, it becomes faster. Gmail is the most famous single page application. Gmail is very slow to load. It's very slow. But once you load Gmail, it's very dynamic. So there is this price to pay. In the beginning, it can be a little bit slow to load, but once you load, you have everything you need because it's called single page application, SPA, because everything goes to the browser. So whenever you call your app, it already load everything for you. It put everything on the browser for you. So that's what's called single page application. Of course, there are advantages. For example, when should you use Angular, SPA, and so on. People say that whenever if you have a very static page, you don't need to use it. But I'm not sure if it's true anymore because nowadays it's very easy. You can make I'm not sure if it's true anymore because most likely or not the page you are building, most likely it is it's going to be dynamic. I don't know why someone will build a very boring page. You can do a huge amount of stuff. But anyway, if you want to build a very boring page, like you don't do anything at all, just load some data, maybe you can use Express. Express, I did myself during my postdoc. I didn't publish, but you actually can do a lot with Express. Express is backend, but you have a called just out of curiosity, called Pug. Pug, the dog. The symbol of the library is a dog. Pug, the dog. Sorry, it's a bug, no bug. Pug. There is also as well AGS, which is another one, AGS. Anyway, there are ways that you can build a static page. If you want to build, if by any chance you don't want a dynamic page, you can create static page if you want. So from React, Angular is not a library. Angular is a framework. I like to check from time to time. I think it's just fine. Make sure. So some remarks about Angular. So as I said before, Angular is a single-page application. It's a SPA. It's mainly written in TypeScript. TypeScript is as the name says, type script. It's JavaScript, like a JavaScript with type. One of the biggest complaints about JavaScript that JavaScript does not have too much rules. Like you can do whatever you want. There is no type in JavaScript. So in my specific experience, I started using Java, the language, Java to do programming. Java is a strong type language. Everything you do in Java, you have to create a type, like a string, integer. You have to say double. You have to tell your language what the hell is that you are creating. JavaScript does not have this kind of restriction. However, it became a mess, as some people say, because especially because nowadays most of the app they're not built anymore by just one people. Open source, such as Google, they have all this kind of huge team working. So if you have a language like JavaScript, there is no rule, there is nothing at all that you can decide. People can start to build a huge amount of stuff that doesn't make no sense. I mean, it becomes harder with time as they keep some people. I'm not talking about my own experience, but talking about some article that I read. It becomes harder and harder with time to manage stuff. So that's when TypeScript was born. TypeScript is the first language to try to replace JavaScript. No, it's not the only language. Several languages try to replace JavaScript, but it seems that I'm going to try to leave for you a presentation, a talk, very nice talk. The speaker, he talks about that. But it seems that TypeScript is the one that really succeeded. Why? Because it does not replace JavaScript at all. I mean, you can even do whatever you want as well. Most of the time, you can do what you want to do with JavaScript. So TypeScript didn't replace JavaScript, just like you try to improve. So you can use lazy load. Essentially, as I said, as one of the biggest drawbacks of SPA single-page application, that you have to reload everything at once. But lazy load will give you the option. If you don't want to do that, you can just say, don't load this, load this, load this. It can be a little bit sometimes. You have to plan your app ahead to do that. You have to say that I want to do lazy load here. So anyway, it was designed to be tested. One of the big things about Angular is that it was designed to be tested. There is now a new framework called the Nest.js. I have a course on that. That Nest.js as well is a copy of Angular. So if you are working with Angular for the very first time, maybe you can consider using Nest.js if you need a backend. Nest.js is a backend. Language. It's a competitor of Express. Express is designed using JavaScript. Nest.js is essentially TypeScript. So I was teaching a student, she was working in a company, and Nest.js has gained a considerable amount of space. I mentioned Nest.js because Nest.js as well was designed to be tested. So if you want to test on the back end, Nest.js is the option. If you want to test on the front end, Angular is the option. So what the hell is a test? Test in a very simple term is like this. When you do a code, you do your computer code, you just run your code. That's fine. However, suppose that in the future you start to change something in your code. It happens a lot. It happens to me several times. It happens all the time. It happens a lot. It may sometimes happen that when you change a piece of your code, you stop the other piece working because you forgot, because this piece depends on this piece. I can tell you, if you are a computer programmer, you know what I'm talking about. It's very hard for you to keep track in your mind about what So especially if your code starts to get bigger and bigger, what's going to happen if you change this part? When you design tests, you make sure that some feature of your code always working properly. Because as I mentioned during the course, you have essentially 3 ways to test your code. There is the compilation error that you will be unable even to run your code. The compiler is going to find the error, such as I have a vector that's going to go into the limit. Like you are trying to get access to a memory that does not exist. And you're going to find most likely going to see an error in a compiler moment. The second type of error, which is TypeScript does that, is to make sure that you do everything according to the rules. Such as if you say that your variable has a certain type, and you try to use it as another type, TypeScript is going to let you know at the real time that you're supposed to do that. At the moment you are doing your code, TypeScript is going to mark for you if a red line, like here in the give a message. That's not the type you're supposed to use with this variable. So you can fix right away. The third type of error that I mentioned in the course is that the error of the test. I mean, the highest, you can think that if you think in terms of a hierarchy of error that you can have in your code, the lowest error is compilation. The second type of error is like language specific, such as TypeScript, that helps you to make sure that you do not make mistake. And you have the higher level of error, which is test. Test, you make sure that some behavior of your code is going to work. During the course I explained that for you. So test make sure that some people, there are several schools of tests. There is a test-driven development, behavior-driven development, domain-driven development. There are different schools of tests, but all of them have tests as a score. So what changed between them? It changed all the tests. The behavior-driven development, you are focused on the behavior. So I like this one, the BDD, behavior-driven development. What's the behavior? Behavior is what your code is supposed to do. If you have, for example, a code that's supposed to give you what time is it? You ask your code, what time is it? Your code is supposed to give you the time. How you give the time? Is not the business it's not your business. If I ask what time is it, doesn't matter how you give him the time, as long as you give him the time. So as long as you give him the time, I'm not concerned about how you give the time. So one test that you can do is that you can make a test that the test is supposed to be independent. It's a separate file. It's supposed not to interfere with your code. So your test will go automatically, like automatic. Ask what time is it, take the time, and make sure that your code always responds properly. How your code responds to that is not the business of your test. Of course, you can test how your code find what time is it, but in general, that's a bad idea, because you are like avoiding your code to grow. Because if you test how your code implements something, even if in the future you decide to improve your code, you have trouble because test will start to fail. The test-driven development, TDD, one of the ideas is that the first version of your code has to be very bad. It has to work. The first version can be just a return, like return a value, just to make sure that your code pass. Some people they give you the kind of tip. Just go to Stack Overflow and copy the first code you find. So your first code has to be bad because it has to work. So that's the idea. So if you test how your bad code works, you'll be unable to improve your code. So that's it. You should always test behavior. So that's the idea of test. Test supposed to test something that's important. So it makes sure that that concept of called entropy. They say that the more your code grows, the higher the entropy. Some people say that your test, you avoid your entropy to grow. So your code will be able to grow without necessarily become like chaotic. So that's the idea behind the test. That's the theory behind why it's supposed to test. As I was talking with Jonathan Carr in a live that we have on this channel, he believes that I was talking about computational biology. He believes that it's impossible for you to grow your code without test. I was asking him about test. I mean, that is the live here. I leave for you the description of the live. and you talked about a lot about test. Let's see this fine here. So you were talking about test on the code. So it's built around the concept of components. So one thing that I like a lot about Angular, I'm going to refer in the description of the article that I wrote, is that Angular is all about test. It's about component. Components, as I'm going to show you here, it's like a box. I'm going to show you more in the upcoming slide what the hell is a component. So some elements, by the way, I took that from the stack bits because I found it was beautiful, nice, the interface. But so you go to, I explained during the course how to do that. But on stack bits, you can easily create any of these on stack bits. Of course, you can do as well on Visual Studio, on VS Code. But stack bits, it can be even easier for you if you are like in the beginner. So components are the build blocks of Angular page. So remember that I told before, but let me just explain that again. You have a page on your website page. So Angular works like this. Every piece of your page is going to be a component. You should have at least one component, because this whole page can be just one component. But in our specific case, in our course, we divided the components, like you put a header, then you put a footer. They are different components. On the full app, you have as well another component here in the middle, you have another component here in the middle. So you may think that the Angular works like this. It's like block, like a jigsaw puzzle. Then you have the piece of your page, the piece supposed to communicate with each other. So Angular is a set of components. At least you're supposed to have at least one component. And they talk to each other. Suppose you have a page as I explained before. You have component 1, component 2, like as you said. Here I'm not sure how they're supposed to be organized. I'm just show they like they are in sequence. So they talk to each other. So they talk to each other. So they talk to each other, and there is a huge discussion. Discussion not on this version of the course, but I have a course in Portuguese in which I explain this kind of communication. So Angular. Some elements that are important in Angular. Servers. I mean, it can take me a huge amount of time just to explain, but I'm not going to get too much in detail here. But any component service in Angular is separate the logic. Like in general, used to do mathematical calculation. That's one of the reasons I have defended that Angular can be used for scientific computation, because the concept of service gives you the freedom to, and it run in the background. So it means that you have a heavy calculation. For me, the last proof that Angular can be used for heavy calculation was TensorFlow.js. TensorFlow.js is a deep learning base. So if deep learning can already do a lot of stuff in the front end, so I mean I believe the kind of calculation that you do in biomathematics in general, they are not very heavy compared to deep learning. I have studied deep learning for a while, so. For me, deep learning is a kind of upper limits. If deep learning can be built, I mean, if you can build a deep learning based app on the front end, for sure you can build a computational biology based app. So service they run in the background, it is a very good thing. It means that it's not going to stop your app. So your app still be running. It's called asynchronous programming. There is a library called the RAJS. It's built in now. It's independent from Angular, but it was incorporated inside the Angular. So Angular now has this capabilities. It's inside Angular. I mean, you do not even have to study RxJS. Because it was incorporated in Angular. It's built for this kind of asynchronous calculation. They have the directive, which is essentially one of the nicest one that we are going to use in the courses called the Angular material. They are like I like to call the magic wonder. Like you just have a HTML, you just use the directive and it change for you your the appearance. You can make it has a huge amount of effect. We are not going to use that too much. We are going to use this Angular, but Angular is so packed and so easy to use that you not even see that it's a directive. But you can build your own directive. You can do your own if you want. I mean, it's like you can build your, you can even publish if you want, publish your own directive. So there is the concept of models. Models should have at least one, which is the main model. During the course, I explained that. But models is how Angular is packed. I mean, I have another slide on the to come and explain that. Have concept of pipe. Pipe is just a way for you. It's a magic wand as well, but instead of change HTML, you change the data that you use. There is pipe even for asynchronous. I don't remember well, but there's a certain type of pipe, such as the date. If you wanna show your date like for a month, year, I don't know, maybe one just month and year. So doesn't matter how you receive your data, your pipe is going to transform for you into this format. So pipe, you can build your own pipe. There is some pipe that come together with Angular. The next one is guard. Guard is quite useful if you want to make sure that something can happen. Guard is like a guard. It makes sure that whenever you go to a page, they check something for you. For example, if you want to make sure that your page can be seen by just someone that you want to see, you make sure that the guard is going to check for you the page before someone accesses the page. And if they do not have the credentials, if they do not have the credential to access the page, just give them a message. You don't have enough privilege. You should be logged in. You shouldn't access this part here. This is confidential. It's like a guard. Like it makes sure that check for you that someone has the authority. Interface is very important. Remember that TypeScript is called TypeScript for a reason. Interface is when you create a kind of type. So it helps. It helps TypeScript. It helps Angular to make sure that you. It helps to make sure that Angular. Not in Angular, but that you are using everything properly. So interface is a way to make sure that you receive. You can use to receive data, then you can use to use the data inside the app. I have used, for example, a lot interface in the past when I was building my postdoc to communicate with the backend. So whenever I receive data from the backend, you make sure that the data respect a kind of format. It's a way for you to put order in the house. So like you say, it's supposed to be this way, that way. On this course specifically, you're not going to use the interface, but on the app, the full app that you have already on the GitHub, you have interface. So class is a general name, like you may think that TypeScript is already object-oriented programming, like it's built inside like object-oriented. So class is everywhere. Like sometimes you can define directly as a class. Sometimes all of this somehow is a class. All of this here somehow is a class. So enum, to be honest, I have never used enum myself, but I have seen people use a lot. It's like a way to make sure that you have some kind of parameters and constant. Like. So as I was saying before, Angular has a concept of model. As I said. So everything goes inside the model. You should have at least one model. So whenever you have a component, which is remember the component is the building block of every page, should have a file called TypeScript, another file called CSS, which is CSS. In our case, we are not using CSS, we are using SCSS, which is a kind of different. It's the same as CSS, but it's improved version. You can have variables, you can have a lot of stuff. CSS change all the time. You see that now even can use like statement. I saw a Medium article, like the title. You can use now if statement inside CSS file. So I think it always evolves, always changes, always improves. But it's appearance. CSS is appearance. HTML is the old school, like the old school, like everything is HTML. So Angular, not just Angular, any like Angular, React, Express, all of them in the after all, they are HTML generator. They are all beautiful, fancy, but then the aftermath, they just create HTML for you. What they do is to make it easier for you to do that. If you go after you build your app in Angular, if you do like you deploy your app, you see that there's huge HTML file because what they do in the aftermath, they just transform all the beauty, all the TypeScript, all the components, yeah, because the current browser they have limitation. So you should transform. They just they cannot understand Angular, they cannot understand TypeScript, they cannot understand Vue and so on. They have to transform in HTML. HTML they are going to understand what the hell is going on. They put in their own language. So it's missing here because you're supposed to have as well one file called the spec, which is a file that's missing here. The spec is the test, is your lab test that you are going to use in the course. There is a huge amount of native component. That one of the nicest thing about Angular is that people can publish. I myself published one for us called the just out of curiosity. I just want to show you, just out of curiosity. You have here just out of curiosity. I published for us, for everyone. Anyone can use that. This is one thing that you can use in Angular. I mean, it was born from our application. Then I decided to make it public. It means that anyone, so you just have to install, like npm install, and then you can use. Even our app, you are already using. It's already using in our app. So just to make sure the user, it has a dependence of essentially Math.js. Depend. When I think about this community called npm, every page that we are built is based on npm. Everything is here. Angular is here. Everyone somehow is here on npm. Then I think that you can like build one library upon the other. So if you see this Math.js here, just out of curiosity, it has a huge dependency as well. Let's go here to it has 9 dependencies, depending on 9 libraries. And there is 1,000 libraries, including my own library, that depend on this one. So you can have this one called ng. Anyway, there's a huge amount of dependency working. So I think that's one of the beauty of npm. That's all free. So that's it. So you have this huge possibility.